OK Computer is as old as I am, so whenever people ask me how old I am, I'll just ask them when did OK Computer come out. I'm joking, don't do that. Anyone with a stable social life won't know what I'm talking about. Radiohead have a knack for being one of the only bands on the earth to appeal to both the mainstream masses and the underground/counterculture scene, making them in theory the perfect band. Of course, music is absolutely subjective, and despite what most elitist Radiohead fans will tell you, Radiohead still have flaws, like every other band on God's green earth. But if there's one piece of media that the consuming public will always consider flawless across the board, it's their 1997 OK Computer album, considered not only Radiohead's best album in their discography, but one of the greatest albums of all time, full stop. It's considered on the same level of quality as seemingly untouchable albums like Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and Pet Sounds, despite it being over 30 years younger than its counterparts. If that doesn't give you a perspective of how large an impact this album has had on the industry and music as an art form in general, then I guess nothing will. Recently, coming up to the 20th anniversary of the album, Radiohead's producer Nigel Godrich went deep into the master tapes and uncovered another album's worth of material within the same time frame as the album. 3 entirely new songs and the B-sides used in single/EP releases at the time, as well as the original album, all remastered for a brand new audience of listeners and at the same time an eagerly awaiting audience of longtime fans. So, does this new release of an old album hold up today, 20 years down the line? That's a fucking stupid question, of course it does. The album on its own, without the extra pieces of goodies sprinkled on like M&Ms on an ice cream, is still as fresh as the day it came out. There isn't the sense of, this band came out in the 90s, while a lot of critically acclaimed bands at the time have that sound embedded in their music no matter how much you remaster and fiddle around with the master tapes. And since OK Computer was remastered again this time round, it actually makes the album seem newer, because there's a bigger sense of clarity and soundscape. You definitely hear this in the instruments that are panned all the way to the left and right channels. For example, in the slow parts of Paranoid Android, you can hear a very faint Moog synthesizer in the right channel of the mix. The last time I listened to the album, I never noticed that. That might be because I used to have really tinny earbuds, but that's beside the point here. There's even more clarity that's uncovered in the sad and somber exit music for a film, where you can very much hear every bit of Tom's guitar playing in the mix, and the vocals make him sound more desperate, especially in the "We All Let You Choke" segment of the song. I always considered Letdown to be one of the weakest songs on the album initially, but this remaster has given me a complete turnaround on what I feel about the song. Because of that, it's, in a sense, made the album better for me. Sure, there isn't going to be a large number of you who will either have a go at me for thinking that Letdown was a bit of a letdown, I'm really sorry for this, or praising a remaster of the album and not the original, authentic 100% first mix that was first released. No, the mix of the original album, despite the music being fantastic, isn't perfect. Not by a fucking long shot. It's too compressed, it's too claustrophobic, it pretty much gives the same kind of treatment most albums of the same era were given in terms of mixing/mastering. And the fact that Nigel Godrich and Radiohead now have full control of the master instead of the late, not-so-great Parlophone label, re-releasing their works over and over again in quote-unquote special collector's edition versions, which fun enough goes against the agendas of the band and the album with their anti-capitalist motives, makes this so much nicer. The album's other songs are very much a staple of the band's abstract aesthetic. Continue to sound as good as they've always been, if not better, but the biggest improvement of sound, especially in my quote-unquote expert opinion, is the mix of electioneering. I always thought the high-pitched feedbackish sound before the main riff of the song was really harsh on my ears, even on low volume, and the only way that I could offset this is if I go to an EQ and lower the frequency at that point, which requires effort, and I don't want to do that when I'm fucking relaxing to music. I know messing around with an EQ doesn't necessarily take effort, but, you know, whatever. Also, music elitists will have a go at me for messing around with the EQ because, you know, there's no such thing as subjectivity in music. Ever. My personal favourite track used to be No Surprises on the first few initial listens, but as I've grown closer and closer to the album, I've come to love Climbing Up the Wall so much more. And even more than the new remaster. I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it. The only song on the album that doesn't bring anything new in terms of mixing goodness, funnily enough, is No Surprises. There's a slight sense of it not being as claustrophobic, which I've already mentioned, but that's about it. It's almost like I've sort of expected that level of quality in the mixing, that I don't find it something to be unique about each individual song. And you might say that's a bad thing, but believe me, it isn't. You've pretty much put yourself on a mastering pedestal where people literally expect it to be amazing. Not many producers have that to flaunt. Nigel Godrich does. I mean, for fuck's sake, he has God in his name. We still see that large amount of quality and clarity in Lucky and The Tourist, but I'm not going to talk about that because I'm lazy and I want to get to the main point of the video, which is the 3 new songs that have emerged, which are titled I Promise, Man of War, and Lift. Those are the songs that I'll critically dismantle with my poorly developed musical brain. I Promise. The moment you go from The Tourist to this song, it's almost like if some cunt was messing around with your Spotify and made the next song in the playlist be something from The Bends, which was when the song was recorded. Well, a few months after the release of The Bends, but there's still that underlying aesthetic throughout the song. In its basic form, it sounds like fake plastic trees without the constant build-up that is present in the latter. As much as the music video is great, and the whole hype of having 3 new Radiohead songs ready to be released to the public, this song doesn't necessarily fit well with the songs that would actually end up on the album. I love the mellotron and I love the guitar that play the main part of the song, but there's not really much after that. The lyrics are still much in this Benz-esque limbo, and the recordings afterwards sort of imply that they're really trying hard to jump out of that limbo and purposely try something uncommercial. The constant snare pattern is probably my least favourite part of the song. If it built up in the same vein as fake plastic trees, then maybe it wouldn't be so bad, but the volume of the snare doesn't change at all for the entire song. And over time, it just feels like it's only there so that Phil Selway could come in and play some simple LR pattern, grab his paycheck and then leave. And maybe use the royalties to make Weatherhouse or something like that, I don't know. I'll go right ahead and say this is my favourite song of the 3. This sounds a lot more like an OK Computer song, in the same vein as Lucky and Karma Police, but there's still that Benz-esque arrangement in a lot of places. Sort of like a smack bang in the middle kind of song. There's more of a build-up in this song, and it almost gets to the point of absolute franticness that is almost unmatched, which makes me want to make the comparison to Climbing Up the Walls. All my praises so far have been whether a Radiohead song sounds like another Radiohead song, or a Coldplay song, which we will delve into in the next song. The intro sounds like Coldplay for a start, which annoys me because I don't want the comment section to be a Coldplay bashing mess of awfulness. I like both bands a lot. Please don't hurt them. The chorus is about the most interesting thing of the song, but that's about it really. The song unfortunately doesn't really have much else to say, and Radiohead for the longest time have felt the same way. Johnny Greenwood even going out to say that it's inferior, which is pretty harsh considering it's not that bad, and even Radiohead have made worse music. I mean, let's not forget On a Friday or The King of Limbs, shall we? I actually like The King of Limbs, I just wanted to say that. That's about really all I have to say. Not exactly analytical, but hopefully bringing something new to the table as well. If you liked the video, then give me a comment giving me some constructive feedback. If you want to see more content featuring this fucking stupid cunt, go over to Cook Productions 1, where the main subject is motorsport and Formula 1. You know, if you're into that kind of stuff. Okay, fuck off.